You are now watching Believe. Do you believe?
Hey everybody, welcome in for the episode 12 of the Blue Note podcast, your one-stop shop here for all things Blues. I'm Mike. We are here without Ethan here today, so we're running somewhat solo here at this point. I have a guest host, Stephen Ground from the Two Guys, One Cup podcast. Stephen, how's it going here today?
Going great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've been trying to get this going here for the last couple of weeks, and so I'm glad, you know, we're able to get you in here for episode 12, the Jori Lehtera episode here, if you will. You know, I look back here, you know, we tried to do a feature player for every single podcast, you know, like a jersey number special here for this point. In 12, there are 34 players in Blues history who have worn the number 12, and none of them seem like they have lasted longer than like 3 seasons.
I was going to say, please don't ask me to try and name them all.
No.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's like you said, I can't even think of, you said Lehtera, but nobody jumps out at me as like, oh, that's a number 12, you know? Yeah. So yeah. I feel that.
Yeah, the biggest, crazy. You know, most notables, you know, you've got Lee Stepniak from 06 to 09, Derek Roy wore it in 2014, and of course Zach Sanford wore it here from 2019 to 2021. But other than that, yeah, there's really nobody of like large note that has worn the number 12. So it's really interesting here at this point. So, but man, I am, you know, here really, really happy to have you on to be able to help break this stuff down. We're going to be taking a quick look here around the Central Division, a couple different things that have happened here since our last recording. And then, you know, we want to be able to break down here what has happened here so far in the offseason, but we're going to do this here with a little bit of a spin here. But before we get into that, listeners, I just want to thank you here so much. If you guys like what we're doing here, please be able to hit the subscribe button, hit the little plus button, you know, whatever that it's going to end up being, so you don't miss a single episode. If you want to really give us a 5-star rating, you know, we absolutely love it, but please give us, you know, your honest opinion so we can be able to consistently make this show here the best possible thing that it can end up being. Leave us a comment, get involved in the conversation here over on Twitter at TBN Pod. That's the Blue Note Podcast. Share the podcast here on social media and other Blues, and so that other Thunderbird fans here as well can be able to find us here as well. So, Stephen, you're able to get into some stuff here around the Central Division here first before we take a dive here into our Blues?
I'm excited. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So, quick look here. Chicago, they have named former NHLer Luke Richardson here as their new head coach. The longtime defenseman here served as a coach within the AHL with the Birmingham Senators, and in the NHL here with the Ottawa Senators, the New York Islanders, and the Montreal Canadiens. He's got his work cut out for him. You know, most notably, they are rumored to be heavily shopping Alex DeBrincat, at least according to Pierre Lebrun here at this point. You know, there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to move him, but, you know, he at 24 years old, the 5'7" winger, he's got 1 year left on his contract, $6.4 million cap hit before he's a restricted free agent with arbitration rights, and he can be an unrestricted free agent here in 2024. He's coming off of a really good season, 41 goals, personal best, 78 points against the Blues here against, you know, all time, 17 games, 7 goals, 5 assists for 12 points and a -5 rating. So not a huge Blues killer here at this point, but definitely somebody that the Blues and Blues fans should be pretty darn familiar with. What are your thoughts? You know, do you like the hire here for them? Are you overly shocked if they're going to be able to move Alex DeBrincat? You know, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like that team has no idea what it's doing. I think I like Luke Richardson. And, you know, in a vacuum, I think he did really well with Montreal, especially when Dom Ducharme had to miss games because of COVID and their playoff run. He took over and seemed to do a great job. They played some of their best hockey with him. So, you know, I think if he was a French speaker, he would already be head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. But, you know, so in terms of the hire, I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, he's not really a young coach, but he probably is more of that kind of like, player coach model, like, you
Mhm.
know, able to communicate with the younger guys and stuff. So I think that makes sense. What I don't really get about the Blackhawks is just like, it seems like they want to rebuild and they don't at the same time, and
Yeah.
they can't really commit to it. And you know, they've got Kane and Taves on the last years of their deal, and
Mhm.
you know, there's always talk about trading either one of them. They both have full no move clauses, so you know, and they've also got $10.5 million salary cap hits, so it's certainly gonna not be easy to get rid of those guys. um they have the, you know, DeBrincat, who you would think if you were rebuilding is the kind of player you build around, not trade.
Mhm.
But you could certainly get a king's ransom for him if you're trying to do a down to the studs rebuild. But
Mhm.
then they also have the absolute boat anchor that is Seth Jones's contract, which is only just starting this year and going through the 2029-2030 season
Yeah.
at 9.5 million. So, you know, I think Blues fans won't be disappointed to hear. I think the Blackhawks are going to be pretty bad for a fairly significant amount of time. And I don't think Luke Richardson, you know, I guess it's a good hire because of the prestige of the team and everything, and a good job to have. And, you know, they always say there's only 32 NHL head coaching jobs, but
Right.
probably not the bench you'd choose to step behind first right now if you, you know, had your pick of the litter. But I think it's a good hire for them. I just think their team is in a bad place.
Yeah, and he's going to definitely have his voice heard as they look to be able to navigate, you know, some of those unfortunate contracts. And I will say unfortunate because some of them are, you know, Patrick Kane is still definitely paying dividends. Jonathan Taves is still paying dividends here in his own way. You know, a lot of times it's just off the score sheet here at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're paying a guy that much, he needs to show up day in and day out here on the score sheet. And so that's one of the more unfortunate ones here at this point. So let's kick it down here to Dallas. They also have found a new bench boss here in Peter DeBoer. They signed him to a 4-year contract worth $4.25 million annually. He has over 500 wins in over 1,000 regular season games, a 68-55 playoff record, including 2 Stanley Cup final appearances with both the Devils in 2012 and 4 years later here with the Sharks. He's going to be reunited with Joe Pavelski, which will be real interesting to be able to see. And what's going to be interesting is that, you know, he is known for a tactic of shots from the point, offense from the point. So Joe Pavelski, who has made a lot of success, especially in his time here in San Jose under Pete DeBoer, with tip-ins and plays in around the crease, the dirty areas. It's going to be great for a guy here like Joe Pavelski, who can just be that net front presence, help be able to teach some of those other guys, and maybe, you know, guys who are in redraft leagues or keeper leagues. Boy, I'd be paying a lot of attention here to a guy like Miro Heiskanen, who can just be able to shoot that puck and just dish it. Here as the number one defenseman here in shots per game and shots total here for all their defensemen. I'd be looking at him and Pavelski as guys that I would target here, like in my fantasy drafts here, especially. But, you know, I don't think this is an overly bad hire. I think Pete's gotten a really tough go around, especially with the Vegas Golden Knights here at this point. But, you know, I'm really interested to see what a team like Dallas can be able to help bring him, because they're another team that is kind of puddling around a little bit. You know, they could be able to contend and they've got some pieces, but they've also got the old guard here that they don't really know what to do with here in Ben and Sagan, but they've got new guys here like Heiskanen and Jake Ottinger and Jason Robertson that, you know, they're ready to take over. But boy, some of those bigger contracts, they're just in a tough situation. And so, you know, the players are more in control here of the team than what the coaches and the guys in the front office are. So, you know, what do you see here in this hire?
First and foremost, I don't like Pete DeBoer. I don't know how much you guys editorialize on the podcast here, so I'll try to keep it professional. But
Never.
No, I mean, I feel like he's built a reputation for kind of whining and complaining. However, he's a good coach. He's got a good track record. I think I agree with you that this is a team that I don't really understand where they are. They're kind of stuck between eras. Like Pavelski is still really good, but he's 37.
Right.
Ben and Sagan are shells of their former selves. And then their forward group doesn't have a lot to write home about it, except Jason Robertson is a superstar. Miro Heiskanen, I think, has the potential to be a superstar. They also have Thomas Harley, who's an incredible young prospect. And then as we saw this playoffs, the potential exists for Jake Ottinger to be one of the best goalies in the league.
Oh, yeah.
But that brings it back around to DeBoer. What I find really interesting about this hire is the number one reason, presumably, that DeBoer isn't in Vegas anymore is that he had a very public falling out with his goaltender. And put Robin Lehner on blast a couple of times, even though Lehner was, playing through pretty significant injury to try and get the Golden Knights into the playoffs. And I feel like if I had a team who built around a potential game-stealing young goalie, I don't know if Pete DeBoer is the hire I'd make because of that. But when I look at it, they have a lot of pieces to build a new core. I think the question is just those Ben and Sagan contracts. If they could ever find a way out from under some of that, or just any sort of answers there, I think they'd be a real threat, and they probably are a playoff team, or at least a contender this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So quick couple of other teams here really fast. Minnesota Wild have re-signed 23-year-old forward Connor Dewar to a 2-year one-way contract here worth $1.6 million. He collected 2 goals, 6 points here over 35 games here this past season, just averaging under 10 minutes here per game. Dewar has yet to be able to play a game here against the Blues. So in case you're unaware here of him, which most Blues fans are, not going to lie, I had to look this guy up to figure out who in the world he was. It's not a big deal. Good contract here for them. I think he's got some halfway decent upside, but just as like a bottom 6 forward. Nashville, the former Tennessee governor, Bill Haslam, has acquired the ownership stake in the Nashville Predators. He will become a minority owner for the next few months, and over the next few years, he will actually become the club's majority owner as a part of a multi-phased purchase transition. So while there's no clear indication if anything will change as a result of this purchase, it does provide, I think, some additional security financially, especially if the team were to construct years with, a 500 season here or worse. So for me personally, it's nice to be able to see that individuals, especially those with some deep pockets, are interested in and following through on the purchase here of some NHL teams. It's nice to see that these guys like what the NHL has to offer, the direction that the NHL here is moving, and it could only help to bring more financial stability, higher salary structures, and hopefully continued improvement to showcase in the game. So thoughts here on the new ownership? I mean, anything here at all? If not, we'll continue to move on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot. I feel like new ownership is, probably a good thing if they are a hockey people and they're passionate. But I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about either politics or ownership in Nashville or Tennessee. And I don't think I've ever heard of Connor Dewar before tonight, to be honest with you. It's a great Scotch, I hear. Not much of a Scotch drinker, but that's about all I know about him.
Yeah. Well, and so something interesting here too, as Blues fans here may recognize, the Predators and Philip Forsberg here also have made little to no progress in contract negotiations. The David Boyle has said that he wants Philip Forsberg in no less than an 8-year contract extension. And I can't say I blame him. He is a cornerstone and a corner piece here of this organization. He is the leading point scorer here for the Nashville Predators. And if I'm Nashville, I am doing everything remotely possible to be able to keep him within the Predators organization. The Blues fans are, they've had their fits here with Philip Forsberg, but I wouldn't mind if he left the division here at this point. So we don't need to see him 4 or 5 times, plus here a season, potentially see him here in the playoffs. What do you think? We're looking at like a $10 million per season player. We're looking at, something below that. Thoughts here on if he's going to stay in Nashville here even. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the ceiling for his contract is probably Roman Yossi's contract, or pretty
Yeah.
close to it, because I just can't imagine them agreeing to pay anyone more than Yossi is making.
Yeah.
That's 9.059. I assume his number is 59. Hockey players love to do that, per season. It's really interesting because I agree with you. Like, how could they possibly move forward without Forsberg? But it's another situation where it's like, how can they add another long aging contract to their roster when they have Duchesne and they have Johansson? Duchesne had a really nice season, but has not lived up to expectations by any means until then. It's interesting. It's like I really do think Forsberg's great, and I think he's great for them. But there is this part of me in the back of my head where it's like, well, this team hasn't done that much. So like, even if he's been their best forward, like what's he doing for them? He's not pushing them over the hump. But I don't know how they could possibly be any better if they let him walk. So it's kind of a catch-22. I think they'll eventually get it done. I find it pretty hard to believe that he's going to leave. People love playing in Nashville. It's a great city. And it's, a no tax state. So it's a very popular destination. I'm hard pressed to imagine Forsberg leaving there. But if he, doesn't get the exact deal he wants, David Poile's a pretty tough negotiator. So anything could happen.
Yeah. And one of the biggest problems is that, there are teams, even though that they are cap strapped, they're willing to be able to spend money on a guy like Philip Forsberg, because guys don't become available here like this every single day of the week, every single offseason. There's no way that this guy doesn't get the contract here that he wants to. There's no way. The biggest thing here for me is whether or not if a contending team wants to pony up the dough here for him. Does he want to be able to go to a small market team? Does he want to be able to, does he want to go above the border? Does he, where does he want to be able to go, and how much is he commanding? Because that's going to dictate a lot here for him, because he can go to a contending team here only once, but then he's going to have to take a little of a pay cut here at that point, or at least based on how much that he wants. But if he's not minding going to a team that is maybe on the upswing, Detroit could be interesting here for him.
Definitely.
He could get his money and be surrounded here by quite a few talented forwards, that are still about a season or two away from like real contention, at least, playoff contention here at this point. But boy, they're just a couple of studs away here on that forward group, and a little bit of extra aging from some of their young pieces. So a Philip Forsberg here could be real interesting on a team like Detroit. So let's head above the border here just really fast. Barry Trotz will not be coaching here this coming season. It was largely rumored here that he was connected to the Winnipeg Jets, and of course offered free beer for life if he chooses to go to the Jets. We had plenty of a joke here based on that, and whether or not if you'd be interested if beer would end up, if that's your choice of drink, but it'll sway you here a little bit. So he has cited family as a number one reason why he's not doing it. I can't say I blame him here one bit if he doesn't want to be able to move on. So it doesn't look like he's going to be coaching anywhere here at this point, let alone here within the division. Pierre-Luc Dubois has told the Jets that he is planning to test free agency in 2024. So does that mean he's going to be out of Winnipeg here as well, like a potential Blake Wheeler? Or does that mean, that they're going to try and hold on to him here a little bit more? The Blues have certainly seen their fits here with Blake Wheeler. Here over the 38 games, he has scored 16 goals, 41 points. So I'm sure that the Blues in the Central Division would not mind, aging vet here or not, moving a guy like Blake Wheeler here out of the division. And especially a guy here like Pierre-Luc Dubois, who may not have all the talent and the success here right now here with the Jets just as of yet, but boy, he's got the talent. He's another guy here just like Philip Forsberg that every single team I think would be craving to have him here on their roster. Before he was moved, I was really hopeful that the Blues were going to try and be able to make something happen here for like a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois. And especially that was before the time here of Robert Thomas, like really kicking it up here a notch. It definitely wasn't here on this podcast, but I was one who would mention around, group of friends here and whatnot. Boy, if we could be able to trade like a Robert Thomas for like a Pierre-Luc Dubois, that would be a blockbuster kind of deal. And I don't know if I'd make that deal anymore here at this point. It may be Pierre-Luc
betrayal
Dubois
is noted.
yeah, maybe Pierre-Luc Dubois plus what, to be able to get a guy like him. So, so any thoughts here? Blake Wheeler, Pierre-Luc Dubois, Barry Trotz, beer,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they waited around for Barry Trotz forever just to not get him in the end. But
yeah.
I assume they have a plan B. It'd be interesting to see if they try and hire somebody, that they feel like they can get rid of if Trotz does decide that he wants to coach next season. But I feel like, I think it was a strange summer for them, and it'll be interesting to see what they do now. It feels like if they aren't going to get Barry Trotz, they're pretty close to rebuild territory themselves too. Yeah. This poor team can't convince anyone to stay in Winnipeg. And from what I hear of Winnipeg, there's good reason for that, but
yeah,
it just seems like if, free beer won't bring you back to your hometown, and, Pierre-Luc Dubois won't stay, like, what are they going to do to keep people there and build a team?
Right.
I think they'll probably have to start trying to build from the ground up again, and,
right.
Maybe focus on some guys that are from Manitoba and try to, build some people that want to be there and, keep going from there.
Yeah. And I know, I mean, me personally, if I'm a guy who is like Mark Scheifele, even Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers, I'm looking around like, what are you doing? Because Connor is signed for 4 more seasons here at 25 years old. Scheifele's 29 with 2 years left, and Ehlers 3 years left here at 26. Granted, they got their money here at this point, between $7 and $6 million here for all 3 of them here at this point. Kyle Connor here being the most expensive one here on the payroll. They're getting their money. But eventually, as a 25, 26, and 29-year-old, I'm wanting to win. That's just what I'm wanting to do. And so if these guys aren't doing here much, if anything, I'm looking at management like, you got to trade me. I want to be able to get out, and I can be able to respect the players who want to be able to stay in Winnipeg and be able to play for the Jets, play for their fans. And I respect that here wholeheartely. Those guys don't come around here too terribly often, who will go after rebuild, after failed attempt. So it's going to be interesting to see what the direction is, especially with those 3 guys. I don't know, it's an odd situation, an unfortunate situation for the Jets and their fans, because they are a diehard fan base. I love their fan base. I have 0 qualms here with them, and I love their team here quite a bit. And it's just been unfortunate to see what's happened here with them here over the last couple of years. So,
yeah, agreed.
All right. So enough around the Central. Let's actually talk some Blues hockey. You ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. So we are going in, and this has been a really good time here. Jeremy Rutherford here of The Athletic just completed here a fan survey, taking a poll here of the Voice of Public Opinion, seeing what Blues fans thought regarding the offseason, this past season, and their thoughts here and opinions. So after the second round loss to Colorado, their confidence level, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, 60.9% said level 4, 30.1% level 5 in their confidence level in the direction here of the organization. Stephen Ground, what says you?
I'm trying to remember what I said specifically, because I did answer all these. I think I'm probably a 4. I think there's some glaring question marks about the team, but I trust, as we'll get into here in a minute, I trust certainly the GM, somewhat mostly the coach and coaching staff. And I certainly think we have, a young core that we have kind of constructed now that looks like it can carry us forward. So I'm definitely not in panic mode. And it doesn't seem like anybody else is either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I personally said 4 as well. I've got some question marks here just surrounding what they're going to do with that defense, especially on the left side, which I think most people are. They're not overly concerned, and I'm not overly concerned with what's going on here with their forward group. They've got a lot of players, some guys here coming up, and that's going to be great. Some question marks here surrounding some around the goaltenders here, rather. Bennington, you don't really know what's going on here with his performance. Husso, unfortunately, you're losing, but you don't really know what could end up happening here based on his playoff performance versus his regular season performance. Is he going to be a guy who is great during the regular season and just fizzles out here in the playoffs and just kind of crumbles under pressure? Or is it just first time really kind of going through the NHL playoffs and that's, what you're wanting? So again, a combined 91% of fans chose either 4 or 5, that they're pretty darn happy here with the way that this organization is going. So the next question that they did was, what is your confidence level here in Doug Armstrong? Again, voice of public opinion said 4 at 27.5%, and an overwhelming 68.3% said 5 out of 5 in their confidence level here in the general manager. Steven, 1, 2, 3, or 4? 4 or 5?
I absolutely smashed 5 on this one. I think, everybody wants to point fingers at the general manager all the time. But I don't know what more Doug Armstrong could do to prove to us that he's, if not the very best, at least a top 5 general manager in the NHL. I mean, he's done it time and time again. How many teams have been competitive for, this is his 13th or 14th year, I think now at the helm. We've been competitive the whole time. We won a cup. We've competed for a couple more cups. We were close to, if not the best challenge the Avalanche faced until probably Tampa now. We were definitely the best challenge they faced before Tampa. I don't know what he could do. Yeah. Does he make mistakes sometimes? Sure. Does he give, is he probably a little too quick to give a long contract extension? Yeah. But like, of all the sins general managers can commit, the ones he's committed are so far down the list. I mean, we're very fortunate to have him, and I have full confidence in him.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question here in my mind. 5 out of 5 is where I'm at here at this point. Like you said, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to overcommit here on times. You're just a little bit too soon looking at you, Marco Scandella. Just way too soon here on some guys. And you're looking at you, Yori Laterra. Nobody really expected.
It's Yori Laterra day.
Yeah, nobody expected Yori Laterra to fizzle out the way that he did. I mean, he looked like he had an amazing connection. It was going to be the next Hall and Oates. It was, and then all of a sudden, what the hell happened? So I'm completely confident here in him. He's doing a great job. So same thing, confidence level here in Coach Berube here and his staff, 5 out of 5, 69.5%. 27% here gave it a 4 out of 5. I don't think that there's really a ton of concern, other than if you start taking like guys like Steve Ott, Jim Montgomery here away from that coaching staff, then I think you really get to see what Berube and company are really made of at that point. Because right now they've got about 3 or 4 different head coaches that really could be at the helm of multiple staffs here around the NHL. So you take away some of his staff, it'll be interesting to see the direction that they go. Steven, what do you think? 1 through 5.
I think I said a 4 here. I will admit that I'm certainly not a Craig Berube hater, but I would say maybe I'm Craig Berube skeptical in the sense that I'm not sure that he is tactically the greatest coach.
Okay.
And when you're not a tactical coach, I worry how long the kind of like any coach, no matter how good a motivator they are, any coach who's like primarily based on motivation, I just wonder how long that can, hold water with a team that's heard it all before.
Mhm.
But he really kind of earned back some of my confidence, I think, this playoff run. And like you said, he's supported by a phenomenal staff. I do worry a little bit what it looks like when Jim Montgomery is hired away, which we assume he will be, possibly even by Winnipeg, but in the next little while, or
Mhm.
Steve Ott, certainly is a guy that seems like has a lot of conversation about head coach, around
Mhm.
him. So if that happens, it'll be interesting to see who he replaces them with and what happens next. But it's hard to argue with a guy that came in, won you a cup, has taken you back to the playoffs 3 times since. I was a little worried when we extended him that we should have let the season play out, but now it looks like that was foolish. And
Yeah.
it's hard, even as someone who's a little predisposed to doubt him. It's hard for me to really criticize him.
Right. So turning that back here to last season, what do you think the biggest reason was then for the Blues playoff exit? He gave 4 choices. Colorado was the better team. The Blues had the talent, but just didn't execute. The Blues are still missing some pieces to the puzzle, and injuries. Guys like Jordan Binnington, Torrey Krug, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think their biggest reason for the playoff exit was?
Personally, it was pretty easy to say Colorado was the better team. I mean, they are, potentially right now looking like they're on path to win a Stanley Cup. Maybe they've got the lead, 17 minutes left or so, but worst case scenario, they will lose in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. They were the best team in the West by a country mile, I think. And I honestly think in sports, not to pontificate too much, but I don't think we leave enough room for like, oh yeah, that team's just better than us. Like there always has to be an excuse or a reason. And I mean, it sucks that Jordan Binnington was hurt. Of course it does. And maybe it was a different series. Maybe we do sneak out a victory if Binnington's healthy. But even if Binnington is healthy, I don't think we're the better team than Colorado. I just think they're kind of off the charts good, and it's okay that we're not quite in that tier right now, because we're building towards that, and they're going to be moving away from that as they lose some of these free agents to costly deals on the open market and things like that. So
see, and that's the thing though that I love about the playoffs of any single sport. You don't need to be the better team. You just need to be the better team for 5, 6, 7 games. It doesn't matter if you're the better team here on person. And so that's why I said injuries, because the Blues had a lot of mojo going into that series. And honestly, quite fairly, so did Colorado. They swept their first series, but they were coming in here with a lot of rest here at that point. The Blues had a lot of stuff going here for them. And I think that they were the better team at that time. And so the injuries that forced some of these guys to come up, especially on the blue line, wreaked havoc here on some of their mojo here at that point. And so I do think that it was injuries that caused them to fall out at that point in time, or shoot, they could have gone to and forced to a Game 7 and maybe even taken that whole series. So again, on paper, yes, absolutely, Colorado is a better team. But the biggest reason, in my opinion, for their early playoff exit, and I will say early because that's why I believe that it was, that the Blues should be playing for a Stanley Cup right now, was the fact that they had those injuries that happened and just caused it exposed their lack of depth, especially on the blue line. So that's my opinion. And again, fully agree here with you that Colorado is the better team. There's no question in my mind that they are a better team. The regular season proved it here at that point, showed just what the NHL lacked and just the pure fingerprints that Joe Sakic here has over this team and just the goal that he has amassed here in Colorado. And it's going to come back to bite him if for some reason that he can't be able to win tonight or be able to win this cup and Tampa Bay comes back to win this series. It's going to come back and bite him because I don't know the next chance that they're going to really get to come this close to be able to win it. So it's going to be interesting. But, 43% here agreed with you. Colorado here was a better team. 41.9% here agreed here with me that it was the injuries. So again, got to respect the honesty here at this point. So, all right. Next question. Should the Blues keep Vladimir Tarasenko or trade him? Voice of public opinion, 50-50. 1,179 votes said keep. 1,178 said trade. Stephen Ground of the Two Guys One Cup podcast says
trade, but
trade him.
It's very hard for me to say that.
Wow.
First of all, what an incredible anomaly to have exactly, one vote away from exactly the same
50,
amount.
50.
Stan Musial, had 1,815 hits at home and 1,815 hits on the road in his career. It's one of my favorite sport facts. I love Vladimir Tarasenko like a member of my own family, and I would love for him to finish his career as a Blue. And if that happens, I'm going to be nothing but happy about it.
Yeah.
The reason I say trade him is purely based on our contract situation.
Mm-hmm.
We have 4 guys who are all going to need hefty deals after next season as things currently stand.
Yeah.
O'Reilly, Thomas, Kyrou, and Tarasenko. It's pretty hard for me to imagine all 4 of those guys are on the roster in
just 2 years
time. Yeah. After next summer. Kyrou and Thomas are obviously both restricted free agents. But both of those guys, if they, assuming they don't fall off a cliff next season, are going to be up for $7, $8, $9 million deals.
Mm-hmm.
O'Reilly probably is a shorter term deal, but is still probably looking at 6, 7, somewhere in there. And Tarasenko, depending, if he repeats what he did this year, he's also looking at 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. So you can't sign all 4 of those guys for that kind of money. When I kind of reason with myself who's the most expendable, I hate to say it, but it's Tarasenko to me because, Kyrou, for whatever his faults may be defensively, he's an electric game-changing forward.
Mm-hmm.
And he's also in his early 20s, and Tarasenko will be entering his 30s for, and be in his 30s for the pretty much entirety of the contract. So I think right now you can get a king's ransom for him. You can save that cap space and try to go get a defenseman to partner with Parayko.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can, load up on some futures and kind of replenish your pipeline.
Why couldn't you do both?
You could do both.
You probably could do both.
Yeah, but I don't want it. If it doesn't happen, I'm certainly not going to be sitting here saying, oh, I can't believe the Vladimir Tarasenko. There are times when I'm like, oh, how did they not trade this guy?
Yeah.
This was a mistake. But I certainly won't be saying that with Vladimir Tarasenko. I'll enjoy every second that he's in a Blues uniform. But just from a utilitarian standpoint, it seems like this could be the time. But I'd love for you to prove me wrong or convince me otherwise.
Yeah. I voted keep him.
Mm-hmm.
But I will be completely honest, and I will say that ever since I hit the button keep, boy, if I'm sitting in Doug Armstrong's spot and somebody comes at me with a trade that makes you go, huh? Boy, I would be hard pressed to not sell high right now here on Tarasenko.
Mm-hmm.
It would be really, really tough. I think I firmly believe that he is going to be back with the Blues here next season, and he could be one of the biggest trade bait candidates going here into next season, all the way to the trade deadline. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, it's going to be interesting. I personally said keep, but like you said, I fully agree. They've got too many contracts. They've got a guy in Jordan Kyrou who I think is going to be this generation's Tyler Seguin, and he can be able to put up 30, 40 goals, here if he truly wanted to. He's not the greatest defensive player, but let's face it.
Who cares?
I don't need him to be. And there's people who are going to bitch and moan that he doesn't play defensively.
It's a bad market for that.
Yep.
Notoriously, but
they're
going to have to get used to it for a player like that.
Yep. That's
they
exactly
got used to
it.
Brett Hull. So
yes. Yeah. In no way, shape, or form here is Jordan Kyrou going to be a Brett Hull. I mean,
no,
there's no way. But you got to be able to keep a guy like Jordan Kyrou. Yeah. There's no way you can be able to move on from a guy here like this unless he gives
the only way you trade him is if it's first, if it's a Matthew Tkachuk type thing where you're getting an absolute superstar. Maybe not even Tkachuk, maybe somebody a little higher echelon than that. But
the only reason why I would not say even a Matthew Tkachuk is because of the contract that he's going to command.
I just think Kyrou is going to command that in a year as well, or maybe not quite as much, but a pretty hefty contract. So if I can say one more thing about Tarasenko, or actually two more things that I forgot to say. He looked completely healthy this year, but you do have to have some concerns long-term about the shoulder. I mean, you just can't be 100% confident about that, because it's just, it's that kind of a reality. And, I think if you could trade him for a package of prospects that then replenish your vault as you go out and get a Jacob Chikrin or an Ivan Provorov or whoever on the left side, I think that, and then clear the cap space in the process, like that's going to be pretty hard to overlook. But like I said, if he's here next year, I'm not going to be upset. And one last thing, I swear I'll shut up. I don't feel like we actually know that he is happy to stay here.
Yeah.
There were kind of little rumblings about, that's all behind him now, but it's never like his agent and he'd never came out and were like, oh yeah, I love St. Louis. It was a bad summer. I'd had a bad couple of years and I'm over it. And that's the other thing. Like if you have any reason to believe that he wouldn't re-sign here or wouldn't even consider re-signing here, then you absolutely should trade him.
Right.
In my opinion. But anyway, I'll stop talking now. Promise.
No. And you're completely right. He, in front of the fans, especially post games and everything, he looks so happy to be here in St. Louis, loves the fans. And I don't doubt that one bit in my mind, but he could still want out.
Yeah, I mean, his problems were never with the city or the fans. It was the organization and how he felt treated by them. Now they kept him and he had a career year, so maybe that does make up for everything. But you just don't know until you hear evidence of that. And if they don't have it, then that's another major factor to consider.
Yeah, and as I say, and we'll see. Time heals all wounds, is what they say. So we'll see if that's the case here with the Blues and Tarasenko. So. Interested to see what's going to happen in time here with another UFA in David Perron. Should the Blues re-sign him? And if so, how much money? 2 years, AAV, average annual value, between $4 and $5 million. 2 years, less than $4 million, which, side point, that's what he's making right now. Re-sign him 3 years, between $3 and $4 million, or let him leave in free agency and let the cap money be for somebody else. The voice of public opinion is all over the board here at this point. 34.8 said 2 years, between $4 and $5 million, so he would get a bump. 22.6 says 2 years less, and so they tell Mr. 57, take a pay cut. 3 years, give him the additional year, between $3 and $4 million at 39.6%. And just 3% said, just let him go. Stephen Ground says,
I believe I said the 3-year option here.
Okay.
Look at the man. I mean, he doesn't age. He doesn't seem to.
Oh, he ages like fine wine. Come on.
Yeah, he's gotten better and better as his career went on. And I realized that he's 34 now, but we were just talking about Joe Pavelski, who's 37 and still looks dominant. Not like I'm not saying David Perron is Joe Pavelski, but I am saying that some players. Oh yeah, I am saying some players age better than others, and also Joe Pavelski's making, I think it was 5.5 million. Let me look it up because I'm obsessed with these. Yeah, he's making 5.5 million a season, which nobody's talking about Perron getting that kind of money. And I think the other big reason to sign him longer is because Ryan O'Reilly loves him, and we need to re-sign Ryan O'Reilly too. I don't have a lot of concerns about our ability to do that, assuming that we want to do that, and I can't fathom why we would not want to, but can't hurt to have his best friend here and keep that all in house and go from there. So yeah, I want to see Perron back because I think he's too important to the team, and not cheap, but too affordable to let him leave. So I would have to keep him, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I was really honestly like, I skipped this question and came back to it here as one of my last ones because I really had to think on this because I want Perron to get a pay bump, but I want him 3 years.
Yeah.
I want him to get both. And so I did ultimately end up answering here 3 years between 3 and 4 million. But if there's a way, in my opinion, that the Blues can be able to give him maybe like a no move clause for his first and second year, and then just like a modified no move clause between, for his third year, so that if the Blues really wanted to, they could explore an option to move him. Again, everything here is completely like up to him. And I think he deserves a pay bump. $4 million here is his minimum here right now, in my opinion. And I don't think he's moving on, signing any contract here with St. Louis unless it's for at least $4 million here at this point. They've already gotten their bargain deal with him whenever he re-signed in St. Louis. So it'll be interesting to see here at this point. Again, I said 3 years between $3 and $4 million. So it'll be interesting where he goes, what he does. But I do hope that it's going to be here with the Blues. Here, as you mentioned about his comparison here, like with a guy like Pavelski. Pavelski led the Stars here in points this season. He had 81 points in 82 games. Yeah, he played all 82 games, 27 goals, 54 assists for 81 points in 82 games. And that's at age 37, where he is averaging 18 and a half minutes of ice time per game. If Perron is averaging 18 and a half minutes here per game as a 37-year-old here with the Blues, I'm jumping for joy. Because one, you just got to love DP57. And secondly, that is a fantastic thing here just for the Blues in general, to have a guy at that age performing that well, to have that kind of a legacy. Like I think the Blues and the front office are ecstatic here for it.
And an underrated, getting up into that conversation of all-time greats in franchise history. If he does sign a 3-year deal, he would be on track to have the most games played. I think he's 673 right now, and Federico's at 927. So, 81 times 3, I guess, is pretty close, but it's right about there. So, I just think that old little fun fact about, playing for 5 different teams and never signing a contract anywhere but here. I want that to be true through his retirement, and I hope it is. I hope they keep him.
Yeah. All right. So we have still quite a bit here left to go here from this. So I don't want to be able to keep you here for too terribly long. So let's just kind of rapid fire here at this point. So Ryan O'Reilly, he's got 1 year left on his contract. He's 31 years old. Should the Blues re-sign him before season? And if so, how long? Re-sign him for 1 or 2 years, re-sign him for 3 years, wait to see how next season goes, or don't re-sign him. Voice of public opinion says, go ahead and re-sign him 3 years. What says you?
Absolutely get him done if you can. Sign him for 3 years. I'm honestly surprised that 3 was his like quote unquote long-term deal, because O'Reilly's only 31, and I
Right.
could easily see 4 or 5 years for a guy who you think his game's going to age really gracefully, just know the way he plays and the way he trains and prepares. But
Right.
we do have so much work to do next summer. Don't leave yourself with more unanswered questions than you have to. Both sides want to be here, I assume. I'm not read any minds, so just do it and keep them long term.
Just be done with it. Yep, absolutely. Yep, I fully agree here with you. So, what do you think then the Blues' most pressing on ice need is then? Top 4 defensemen, starting goalie other than Jordan Binnington, a backup goalie, or a solid fourth line?
Well, it's no surprise. I think the public opinion went overwhelmingly for top 4 defensemen.
Yes.
I have concerns about our defense that go beyond just adding one person to it, but I certainly think we need an answer on the left side for Parayko. And I love Scott Perunovich, I would love to see him get more of an opportunity, but I don't think this team's just gonna throw him into the top 4 and see how it works. I would be kind of intrigued if they did, but I don't think that's how they're going to operate. And I think they'll go out and make a splash for a top 4 guy.
Right. Yeah. I was even asked the other day, what would I think of the Blues going after a guy like Ian Cole? And for me, I'm like, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't, but regardless of where you put him and who you have as your technical top pairing unit, if you say that the top pairing unit here is Krug and Falk, fine. You need a pairing match. You need a pair for whether it's Robert Bortuzzo or whoever else here is on that back right-hand side, or a pair here with Colton Parayko. And right now, a guy like Ian Cole, it's not going to match here really well. Parayko's going to play those long minutes. He's going to play those hard minutes here. And like you said, playing a guy here like a Scott Perunovich may pan out extremely well. I don't know if that's the option. And so right now, instead of trying to find lines and pairings, and they need to find personnel matches here at this point. And so that's where, and why I think that the Blues and fans even have said, maybe moving a guy out like a Colton Parayko so that they could get maybe a little bit more fluidity makes more sense. So as of right now, I fully agree here with the public opinion that says that we need to be able to get a top 4 defenseman. So in that same vein, if the Blues could acquire a top 4 defenseman, which 4 of these options do you think that they should go out and do it? Trade Tarasenko or a defenseman to move his salary out and get one. Don't re-sign Perron and use that money. Trade package including Ivan Barbashev and either Jake Neighbors or Zach Balduke, or I don't like any of those options, so use somebody here like Mikko Nikola and Scott Perunovich.
We already talked about my opinion on trading Tarasenko and so I think that probably is where I stand. I love Ivan Barbashev, but like if Ivan Barbashev and either of those forward prospects get you a top level defenseman, I'm sorry, I'm happy to make that trade.
What do you have over that general manager at that point? That's what I'm
exactly. Yes. So I want to see how Neighbors and Bolduc would do here, but I'm sorry, that's a trade I absolutely make 100 times over. So I'm not upset about either of those. And I really wouldn't be too terribly upset about the Perunovich option. I just really don't expect this franchise to do it. I don't think that's quite how they operate. So
and that's where I was torn. Realistically, the trade would more than likely be Tarasenko for a defenseman and move his trade out. But I personally answered it of, I would absolutely make a trade that says Barbashev and either Jake Neighbors or Balduke for a top 4 defenseman. So that was the one that I said, because that's the one I would prefer if that's what it took. So, we mentioned here in our confidence here in a couple different of the positions, Jordan Binnington, he did play really well here at the end of the season and into the playoffs. What's your confidence level? 1, 2, 3, or 5? What's your confidence level going into the next season?
I think I went with the 4 here. Definitely a worrying regular season, but he looked so good in the playoffs. It's hard to imagine him not being motivated and good entering next season.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's what public opinion here said as well, 46.8%. I went with the middle of the road, the 35% that says 3. In my opinion, you got to show me it.
Very understandable.
But you've got to show me here again, moving into next season, that you can be fine here at this point. And it's not that I don't trust him. Again, show me you can do it. And I'm all for it. So should they look to trade Binnington and re-sign Husso as their starter? Yes or no?
No, but it's also gobbledygook because I don't know who's trading for Jordan Binnington right now.
Especially that contract.
Yeah. That's just a weird. That was a kind of. I love Jeremy Rutherford, but that was a weird question to me, and I wouldn't do it. I mean, I guess I would if I could get rid of the Binnington contract and not have to, basically sacrifice assets to do it and get Husso for cheaper. I guess I might, but it's like an impossible question or an impossible trade. So what's the point?
Yeah. And you just don't know, like that's so much here. So like of the unknown, because coming into this season, Billy Husso was a decent backup goaltender, but he didn't have the track record that suggested that he was going to succeed, and especially at that level here as a starting goaltender. So I still voted no. And I think we're in agreement here on that. If Binnington's the starter though, and Husso leaves via free agency, which is what we're expecting, should the Blues re-sign Charlie Lindgren here as their backup? Yes or no?
I'm going to be the party pooper here. Absolutely not. I don't understand this. He had five games on a ridiculous heater. People forget how hot and cold the goaltending position is. They just pretend that it's not. But like, this guy has had 7, 8, 9 years to prove that he's an NHL level goalie, and I just don't see how, if you're a serious contender, you can go into next season with him as your option if God forbid Binnington gets hurt again, or what if the knee takes longer to fully heal than we thought, or anything, or he re-aggravates it. It's just like he's played 29 games in his career, and he'll be close to 30 or close to 29 entering next season. Yeah, I just don't see it personally.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like Lindgren, I really do.
I mean, the advantage is it'd be dirt cheap, so you can definitely make that argument. But you would just have to have so much confidence in Binnington, I feel like, which just seems unwarranted right now. I say bring Eero Halak back home and give it.
Okay, we're gonna move on here with that one. Here, a little bit of breaking news. Congratulations, and I will say this here with the utmost sincerity. Congratulations to the Colorado Avalanche, as they have officially won the Stanley Cup here over the Tampa Bay Lightning. So their first title since 2001, and they win 2-1 here over the Lightning. So next question here again, and again, just going to keep going here, just rapid fire. Do you think that Jake Neighbors will make the opening night roster? And if so, top 3 lines, 4th line, or need some games in the AHL?
I definitely think he'll make it. I think they will try to integrate him on the 4th line initially. I think they'll try to get him in the top 3 right out of the gate. I think he'll probably kind of end up getting some probably AHL time and some NHL 4th line time and some other stuff. But, I think he'll definitely make it out of camp. If he did this year, it'd be pretty surprising if he doesn't next year. So,
yeah. And that's where, I said, ultimately, I hope that he makes the top 3 lines, and that's where I vote. But ultimately, I am fine if he is on the 4th line. I don't think that's the right fit for him, but I'm not opposed to him playing that role, just as long as he keeps continuously pushing the offense and pushing, what he is here as a player at that point. So who is the Blues top prospect not currently on the roster, Neighbors or Balduke. I personally said it's Neighbors. Balduke here looks good, but we haven't really seen much of him. And recency bias, in my opinion, just says Jake Neighbors.
Agreed. Balduke had a good season, but Neighbors had a great season, captained his team to a cup and looks great. So
yeah. Stanley Cup window. I'm going to skip a question here. Stanley Cup window still open? If so, for how long? 1 or 2 years, 3+ years, or they're contenders, but don't think that they're going to be in the cup for the next 5 years.
I said 3+ years here, which I think is obviously outside the box. I think we're underestimating how good the young component is and how good Doug Armstrong is at maneuvering things to always be competitive. So, one window may close for a minute or two, but I think he'll get us right back there. So I said 3+.
Yeah. All right. So these last 2 questions here are going to be almost handcuffed here with one another. Would you prefer Armstrong here have an active offseason, maybe including a major move, or keep the roster fairly intact? So yes or no, active offseason major move, or keep the roster here intact?
I mean, who doesn't want a major move? That's what makes the offseason fun. So yeah. I said a major move.
Yeah. And I said keep active offseason major move. And I don't think that you're going to have a successful offseason unless you do make a major move to address that defensive pairings. And I think the only way to address it here is going to be via the trade. So with that in mind, which of these offseason scenarios do you think is likely to happen? Trade for Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk here, that is, a trade for Chychrun out of Arizona, a trade here with the Philadelphia Flyers for defenseman Ivan Provorov, or Tarasenko returns, Perron and Nick Leddy are also re-signed. Which one of those do you think is likely to happen?
I just don't think Nick Leddy is the answer. Nothing against him. I just think that's a real big gamble to give him a costly extension. We're all saying, hey, the defense didn't look good enough this year. And then we're all like, yeah, let's bring Nick Leddy back. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think the most likely is Chychrun. There's enough smoke there, and the Bill Armstrong connection seemed to make that pretty possible. I don't even know if it makes the most sense, but God, do I want to see Matthew Tkachuk as a Blues. So my heart says I'd love to see that because, hey, if you have Matthew, then you only need Brady to complete the collection. Know? So I would love to see that. I don't know if they can pull it off, but
it may be later in his career, but it still counts. It still counts. Yeah. And I'm really torn here because I love the idea of acquiring a guy like Provorov, but he has more offensive upside here, in my opinion, than he has defensive upside. Yeah. So then, in my opinion, you're just creating and just re-signing another guy who is very similar to like a Scott Perunovich, which you already have in-house. So why? Yeah. And Jacob Chychrun, I think, is more of a defensive style player. He's more two-way, but more of a defensive style player here of those. And so I said Jacob Chychrun here at that point here. And so did the Voice of Public Opinion. They did say 24.4%, but they are thinking that the likeliest option here is going to be Tarasenko, Perron, and Nick Leddy here have returned. So, all right. Well, that here about wraps up here for us. Stephen, where can they find you here on Twitter? Where can they find any your writings, anything like that?
Well, you can find my writing at the Hockey Writers. We just wrapped up. You did a lot of it as well. The Blues Report Card series. That was a labor of love for all of us, I would say. But every player that had more than 10 games played, plus the coach and GM got a specified report card with a grade, which I just have to say is much harder to do for James Neal than for Jordan Kyrou. But especially when you have to hit 600 words or whatever the limit is. But I do love to pontificate, so we made it work. But that's all there on the Hockey Writers, and our Twitter for the podcast is at 2guys1cup, all spelled out, no numbers or anything in there.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you again here so much for coming on. And again, for Ethan and I both as well, we, enjoyed having you on, and, we wanted to have you on again here on real soon. Maybe here as we see the Blues take to the draft here very shortly. And, as we start kind of breaking down the drafts here at this point. So love to be able to have you on, and just thank you again here so much. Again, if you enjoy what you have been listening to, enjoying just the breakdown here, enjoying what we are doing here on the podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a thumbs up here rating at this point. Do what you're going to do. Share the podcast around, and be able to share it around here with some Blues fans and, anybody else who thinks that they might just enjoy here a new hockey podcast. So from us here at the Blue Note Podcast, thanks so much. Good night.